Okay, we're live. Hi, this is William Ramsey. Welcome to William Ramsey Investigates. On today's show of a very special guest, somebody I've listened to on other shows. I'm almost positive I've listened to him at least twice on the SGT report. He goes by CRROW777, CRROW777. And I'll bring up his website in a second. I was looking through his stuff today. His website is CROW777radio.com. And you can see a lot of his work. He has his own podcast. He's done a lot of work on photograph, like high resolution photographs of the moon. He's done a movie titled Shoot the Moon. And he's very knowledgeable on a wide variety of subjects. He's kind of like a polymath, I would say, is a fair and accurate description. And I've been going back and forth with his producer, kind of a subject, but today is June 30th, 2026. And something I think that is important to note happened today on Congress, which is this MKUltra hearings. And it had two people I really admire. Stephen Kinzer, who wrote a book titled The Poisoner in Chief about Sidney Gottlieb, and then also O'Neill, who wrote Chaos. That book was like got blown out and is super popular. It's really considered a bestseller. It has to be. And people talk about it all the time. I actually had him on my show in 2019. Before it really took off, but some people are critics of him. I think that he just looked at things with this kind of parapolitical angle that some people did not look at maybe at that time, 7 years ago. So to me, it was a groundbreaking book. And he talked a lot about Jolly West. They'd mentioned Jolly West a lot of times in this congressional hearing. But we're going to start out. I'm going to play a few videos after CRROW adds his introduction. We're just going to play a few videos and go into kind of like what's happening. Like this is, we talked in the pre-show about MKUltra kind of being on a continuum as like this is what they were researching back in the 50s, 60s, 70s. Well, where are they today? What are they doing today? And where are we? I think we're into a very serious application of social and cultural control. And CRROW mentioned the word surveillance capitalism, which I think is a really great term that he can expand more about. So CRROW, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
For people who haven't heard your name, like I said, I've listened to you on multiple spots. I'm trying to remember, but for people who haven't heard your name, maybe you can add on to the introduction, tell people what you've been working on, and then we can listen to these two videos and go from there.
All right, perfect. All my stuff is on a private server because I've been censored out of existence, and there's an active censorship algorithm on Google on my name and my work. So CRROW777 Radio is the website. There are 2 R's in the word CRROW. All the membership there gets free access to everything. I started out shooting the moon, which is how I ended up on the public stage. There's a 2-hour film about all my older work, which is free to membership. I'm currently filming the sun with super high-end solar tools, and I don't post those out where they get censored anymore. I post those only on my private server, and those are exclusive to membership. Also, I run a podcast every Wednesday, and since we're going to talk about what we might as well call surveillance capitalism, I've been covering that for over a decade. As a matter of fact, the first book that I saw come out, a lady named Shoshana Zuboff, I think may have coined the term surveillance capitalism. If I'm not mistaken, I don't have Rose here to correct me. I think it came out in maybe 2016. Pretty thick book, many hundreds of pages. And she was the first person I'm aware of to have access to all the boardrooms like Google and Apple and all these places to cover what AI, how it came to be and where it's going. Continually, she asked this question in every boardroom: is it going to harm us? That was asked in one way, shape, or form. Every time the answer was, we think so, probably. And that was it. They just dropped it every time that question was asked. So you asked where we are right now. It is my view we are up to our eyeballs.
I think you're right. I think that there have been lawsuits against Palantir and this at least like conceptual like invasion of privacy way beyond the Bill of Rights as memorialized in the Constitution. And I think that this kind of intrusiveness of the state or the state's powers, or even corporation and the state, maybe fascism in a not the kind of leather boot stomping type of fascism, but the
Technical kind.
yeah, like the actual real fusing of the state and corporate power together against the people
Central
is
Intelligence.
intense. But I think that MKUltra exemplifies that. I think that MKUltra worked with like companies and fronts and educational institutions. So who's to say it's not happening today under Palantir and other corporations? But I do think this is an interesting intro, and I'd like to just play that for the audience as well.
All right.
This hearing is about the crimes committed by the Central Intelligence Agency against the American citizens and the decades of secrecy used to conceal them. The American people deserve a complete and truthful record. The victims and their families deserve acknowledgement, and this Congress has a constitutional obligation to ensure that full declassification is not delayed any longer. Project MKUltra was not a policy failure or an overzealous program that got out of hand. It was a deliberate, systematic governmental operation that subjected American citizens, prisoners, hospital patients, veterans, ordinary people to LSD, electroshock, hypnosis, sensory deprivation, psychological torture without their knowledge or consent. This went on for 20 years on American soil, funded by American taxpayer dollars and authorized by the very top of U.S. intelligence apparatus. And this program, when it did end, the men who ran it did not cooperate with investigators. They did not come forward. They committed another crime. They destroyed evidence. The documents this task force has reviewed are unambiguous. In January 1973, the director of the CIA, Richard Helms, prepared to leave office. He personally ordered the destruction of MKUltra records. The CIA official document in writing.
Well, that's what he told everybody, by the way. If you believe that, I've got some oceanfront land in Colorado for you.
States, over my stated objectives, the MKUltra files were destroyed by the order of DCI Mr. Helms shortly before his departure from office. A separate internal account confirms that Helms telephoned Dr. Gottlieb directly and instructed him to destroy, quote, all files pertaining to drug research and associated activities. Gottlieb compiled 4 people, spent an entire day tearing, burning down 152 files. Then Gottlieb had his personal papers destroyed by his secretary before he retired. The head of the CIA-owned Records Center protested the destruction in writing, but he was overruled. That is obstruction of justice. That is criminal destruction of federal records, and neither individuals were ever charged with a crime for it. Helms received a $2,000 fine for lying to Congress about an unrelated matter and collected his government pension until he died. Gottlieb retired in rural Virginia and wrote poetry. No one went to prison. No victim was ever formally compensated by the government for the harm that they caused. By 1975, the Church Committee and the Rockefeller Commission had already established through sworn testimony and the surviving 1963 Inspector General report that MKUltra existed and that the CIA had run a program of human experimentation on unwitting Americans. The scope and detail of what we know today is largely because of an accident. In 1977, an archivist diligently complying with a FOIA request discovered 7 boxes of MKUltra financial records that had been misfiled and escaped the bonfire. Those 7 boxes included the names of institutions, the name of subprojects, the researchers who participated, or expert opinion.
All right, here's another one.
Jack
This is
Ruby
another video just about the induction of schismogenesis or schizophrenia and mental disorders. This is interesting.
Manson were assets of the intelligence agencies specifically pertaining to MKUltra. Were they MKUltra victims?
Yeah, theoretically Manson, I've never been able to prove absolutely. Jack Ruby, I believe, this is something else. The Warren Commission investigation, on the Warren Commission was Alan Dulles, the former CIA director, who authorized and ran MKUltra until he was fired by President Kennedy. The liaison to the committee for the CIA, who handled the information coming from the CIA back and forth to the Warren Commission, was Richard Helms, who was a direct supervisor of Jolly West. They knew who West was. They knew that what West was capable of and what they had paid him to do and what he had reported to them that he could do, including inducing mental disorders in people. That was never disclosed to the commission as far as anyone knows. So I believe that West was put in there to keep Jack Ruby from telling his story.
Wow. In closing, I just want to thank you all for being here today, and we will be following up, Dr. Kinzer, on your request to fully redact. I'll be following up personally with the director of the CIA.
Anyway, those are the two videos that I have. I have a bunch of other videos too, but I think that it's a good starting point to kind of, as a background to what's led up to today, because there's so much information that has come out. There's a couple books, Search for the Manchurian Candidate, Operation Mind Control, Better Classics. But I mean, this stuff is still being applied today. Wouldn't you agree with that, Crow?
It never went away. If you want to track this back accurately, we can go back to at least the late 1800s and the Frankfurt School. The Frankfurt School has direct lines to the Tavistock Institute, and the Tavistock Institute has people in every corporation that matters, or Tavistock trained people, to include everything that comes out of Hollywood. We did a show about the Tavistock. We did a couple shows on the Tavistock Institute. And for those who don't know, they're social engineers, what they do. But there was another book written by Daniel Estelin, and he went so far as to demonstrate that when any given TV show or films or things like this, they have a man in there. And after the script is done, after it's getting ready to go on, there's a guy who's been trained or from Tavistock who's inserting the social engineering in before it gets filmed. And now, with the way films are made, that can even be done after the fact. So not only has it never gone away, it is part of the fabric of what it means to live in this world right now.
Right. So it's always kind of be around all the way up to today. So this cultural engineering, the MKUltra it's not some kind of aberration or anomaly. It's just been going on for all the way back to the 19th century of all these things. And a lot of this fiction that we think is entertainment was actually social engineering. Would you agree with that?
Well, I think I would take out the double barrel shotgun and expand that, ad nauseum. If we take a simple character, which they're trotting out on the stage, and by the way, I'm so happy to see Congress finally telling us the truth. There's going to be people going to jail here shortly, right? Because they've obviously violated every constitutional right that anyone ever had, not to mention God-given rights. This is hot air being blown into a microphone, and they're admitting what they're admitting. This is a bit like Revelation of the Method, as Michael Hoffman and James Shelby Downard put down. But if you take a character like Manson, let's just do a little bit of logic here. How many lives do you suppose were touched by that? Well, he was into the Laurel Canyon scene, which people like McGowan showed were all children of the military-industrial complex. They invented a new musical place because when Laurel Canyon came to be, there was no music system there. It was all New York and down there in the South, in Nashville. And so they put it there. They created it. They even invented the look of what hippies would be. McGowan showed that there was a store selling hippie clothes before anyone knew what a hippie was. My point is that music touched every corner of this realm, every corner. Manson's in the middle of it. He's in Laurel Canyon, and they're drugging the living bejesus out of everybody. And they're doing it with LSD, which is a big part of the things that are supposedly being covered here. So my point would be that they did it to more people than could ever be quantified. And to this day, the drug problem that they started in the late 50s, early 60s has gotten so bad that the pusher in our time resides at CVS over the counter.
Right. So they just normalize. So all these mind control drugs like so-called antidepressants, opioids, all this stuff could be seen as an adjunct to what they popularize. It's interesting you say that because in the part, I haven't listened to the entirety of the hearing, but they literally, O'Neill says, what they're going to do now is we've studied in the lab. Now we need to popularize it. So they made this conscious thing to take the research they had done in the 50s and apply it into the population in the 60s. So you could see Manson, like you mentioned, in Laurel Canyon, who McGowan literally said all those people have military or intel or elite backgrounds, and then popularized it to the world. Like Manson's best buddies with one of the Wilson brothers from the Beach Boys. It's actually it's amazing. So all that stuff has to be going on now. When you see a lot of these people in their kind of family backgrounds, it's kind of like you see that continuation still occurring, right?
Yeah, it's more than just occurring. All these things have been normalized, and instead of, like the pusher on the street, it has been normalized to the point where it's what you said. The drugs are over the counter now, but what's worse is we all, like, if you think back to the music of your childhood, even if you don't particularly like it, it holds a place in your heart because it reminds you of a time. When you mix drugs into that nostalgia is perverted in a way, and that has tracked through the generations. And so the point I would make is, in the 50s, we didn't, pot use was not very prevalent, let alone, hardcore drugs. By the time you get into the early 60s, they have, by design, they broke the family unit that was around in the 50s. They normalized drug use and drugged the living bejesus out of a generation. And part of the reason they did it back then is because there was a massive generation coming out of World War II of young people who were sick of the way things were running, and they truly wanted to change the world. And in my mind, that is a big part of why we got rock and roll. What happened to my generation with drugs and rock and roll came again in the 90s with rap, but it was that on steroids. There is no redeeming quality in what we call rap, and the gangster rap and the frequencies that we know they put into the music, and even the drum machines and things that were making it had frequencies and resonance that hold you down in your lowest chakra, to try to explain that in a general way. And it's harmful beyond our ability to know how harmful it is. And if we go back to this period of time that they're pointing out with characters like Manson and MKUltra out there running around, Haight-Ashbury and other places, the seed they planted has grown into a forest that covers the entire realm.
It really does. I mean, it's really just metastasized. And what's interesting is it's normalized. So all this stuff is in the pharmacological, pharmakia type stuff is all normalized and standardized. And it's really been a plague. It's kind of like a form of a plague. It goes all the way up into the kind of capitalization of all that stuff too, right? Like the making money through the drugs and the industry. Like gangster rap was a huge industry. So not only was it like eliciting the baser type of sensibilities of people, I mean, there are probably more white listeners than black, is my understanding, but like it created this whole new culture and capitalistic culture based upon pretty dark stuff. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, it's like at some point somebody did a study on SpongeBob SquarePants to show that the children that grew up with that their IQ, for lack of a better descriptive term, had been lowered as a result of being exposed to all that. Well, we know certainly now that rap was that on steroids, but it's not alone in this. It was done to my generation just at a lesser level, through rock and roll. As a matter of fact, when the 90s came, they basically defunded rock and roll. They did things like big bands like Ted Nugent paid $1 million not to come back with the damn Yankees or something like that. They took the air out of the room for rock and roll because they had the plan to push this other kind of music that was going to literally dim your consciousness and hold it down in a resonance level that is described as where you find sex and violence. And that is a pretty stunning thing. When we go back now and we see the so-called artists, because I'm not going to go that far, who created that music, we find out that they won't even let their children listen to what they created. Now, if we take this over into the technical realm, we see a similar thing. The people who created these social media platforms and these apps won't let their children use them because they realized that not only were they addictive, they designed them to be addictive when they got to realize, the power of what was going on. And the book I mentioned, that's where we are now. If you look at and it's hard to deny, we're screaming towards surveillance capitalism. And in surveillance capitalism, money doesn't matter. The only thing that has value, and it is the highest value, is data. And the reason data matters is because they have AI. Now, right now, in one side of their mouth, they're telling us, well, we can't pollute the world anymore, or we're going to be in trouble. And the resources, things like water, are becoming scarce. We've got to be careful. Well, they've got a data center plan for every state. The biggest data centers, we are told, use ungodly amounts of resource and pollute at levels that are also ungodly. The biggest of these centers supposedly uses 500 million gallons of water a day. So they're putting in this infrastructure, which will be the Skynet for the surveillance capitalism system that they want to go global. This is Skynet. This is exactly what you were shown in the Terminator. The data centers anchor that. The flock cameras are major arteries to that. And what basically happens is data is fed to AI, and the power that that gives whoever has access should not be given to human beings. It was recently made fun of in a movie with Meryl Streep. Maybe it was Don't Look Up. I don't remember the name of the movie, but the rich people had access to the AI guy who could calculate when you were going to die simply by taking your data and doing what AI does. And this is not a made-up thing. This is a real thing. Meryl Streep's character goes back and forth and decides, okay, I'm going to find out when I die. She goes, when am I going to die? And the technical guy tells her, well, a brontosaurus bird's going to kill you, or something like that. I don't know the name. And she says, well, what the heck is a brontosaurus bird? And the technical guy says, we have searched every database known to man. There's no such thing. The movie goes on. At the end of the movie, the world's going to die. So, of course, the rich people get on a spaceship, go to a planet where no one's ever been. Meryl Streep gets off the ship, walks outside. There's a beautiful bird, and it stomps her out, kills her on the spot. And the technical guy says, I guess we know what a brontosaurus bird is. This is not a leap or a stretch regarding the power that AI gives you. It can predict the future in a 98% certainty in many ways. And for people who don't think this is possible, go look at the law of large numbers and look up the wisdom of the crowd. These are the two concepts that help to build Vegas. And by the way, Vegas is another evidence of what I'm telling you. How is it that every corporation in Vegas is no longer interested in bringing millions of people in because now they're going to serve billionaires? But to get back to the point, the wisdom of the crowd can be described like this. You get a jar. Let's call it a mason jar. How about that? That might fit. You get a mason jar and fill it with gumballs, and you get 500 people to guess. Then you count up how many people guessed, and you average what each one said. Okay? At a certain number, which is probably like 10,000 or 100,000, when that is done, even including the guesses like the one guy who said there's one gumball and the other guy who said there's clearly 10 million gumballs, when you average all that at a certain data level, at a certain number of guesses, it is on the money every time.
Wow. Yeah, they call it here the weight of the ox.
There you go. That's what it was exactly. You know what I'm
cool.
talking about, because that was done at the fairs, right? The county fairs. They did the wisdom of the crowd thing. So when you start to calculate out everything we're saying here, and like when I first got into the technical world, the big achievement was called a data cube. Well, where we are now, what do you call a shape with a million sides or a billion sides? Certainly not a cube. My point is that with the data collection as it's going now, they will know everything there is to be known about you. And when applied with the technical ability of AI and something like a 98% certainty, they can easily tell you when you will die, the minute it will happen, the geography you will be in, what it was that killed you, and what group of people that puts you in. And
that's absolutely incredible. So it's really the data is the precursor to capitalistic exchange. It's something different. It predicts what money you'll have, what money you'll spend, et cetera, right?
It's the enforcer and the time machine. And what's worse is if you can predict an outcome to a 90-something% certainty, we know how these guys work. They're also going to run, models on what happens if we fail. And what that will achieve is if they ever do fail, which becomes less likely with backing like that, then they will never fail that way again, because they already have backup plans ready to go that have also been modeled out to a 90-something% certainty. It's crazy. It's kind of like the idea of training AI, where I've read concepts where, like, when AI makes a mistake, that's actually what we want, because it will never make that mistake again.
Right. Interesting. So do you think that because these elites or these tech oligarchs have access to this, they're making decisions that the general public wouldn't make, like buying islands or Doom, you know, Doom caves or whatever you call it?
I think that, as an example, the Guidestones, remember the Guidestones?
Very well. Yeah, very, very well.
So I think they were telling us the truth. Not only were they in a number of languages, but they put forth a technology not very many places in the world are going to be able to pull off. They had holes drilled in concrete that centered a star up in the sky clock. You need to know a few things to pull that off. And it was also aligned like the ancient cultures used to be. But one of the things that those Guidestones by R.C. Christian told us is that they only want 500 million people. Well, if there's 8.3 billion, which I don't believe, by the way, I accept, as did Daniel Estulin at the time I did this episode, that in the advanced part of the world, population has been falling since at least the 70s. But to get back to the point, if they want 500 million people and there's 8.3 billion, that means the vast majority of us got to go now. And I think what they're doing is they're creating their Skynet with their data centers. They will have a basically digital concentration camp that controls everything. And they will have the predictive power of not quite a god, but getting close to that neighborhood.
Like almost like Book of Revelation powers or something like that. Like incredible. And the Guidestones were also based on monolith, like the monolith shape too, which is kind of odd.
Which we found at Ground Zero too, right? There's an exact duplicate hotel at the monolith at Ground Zero.
And in 2001: A Space Odyssey, weird things. And in your friends or your associates, Mike Hoffman's book, Psychological Warfare in Secret Societies. Is that the title again?
Yeah, yeah.
Amazing book. Amazing book.
Yeah, for you folks listening, if you want to get a crash course on how this country actually came to be and how it was built by a cult tendency, get a little text called King Kill 33. It's on Michael Hoffman's website. You can find it there, or you can go to CRROW777radio.com and ask, and we'll point you in the direction. But it is a lesson that you've probably never had if you're not familiar.
Yeah, I've done a couple shows on that. Shelby Downard, and it was the guy who did Spies, Spooks, and Kooks wrote.
Oh, yeah.
Adam Go Rightly.
There you go.
Yeah, and I've had him with Visigoth. I don't know if you remember Visigoth, but he was on that show. So I've had some of Visigoth's stuff. He was willing to kind of research that on a radio show, not even an internet show. But so that whole thing, but it also pertains, like you've done other shows and research. I was just looking, like your episodes, you're at almost 700 podcast episodes. Is that right?
That's true. Yep.
And each one is about 2 hours?
Yes.
Gotcha. So you can get the first hour free if people want to.
Yeah, you can go to my website without even logging in and have free access to the first hour. But since it's on a private server, every syllable, every consonant, every vowel I have ever uttered is available all the way back to episode 1. And some of those early episodes will starch your socks, like the one that tells you nuclear weapons don't exist as described.
So you really don't think that weapons exist? When did you do your first episode? Do you remember the year?
Well, it's hard because I had been interviewed quite a bit before I had my site fully functional. I'm going to say 2015, 2016. I had a site that went away before the first parts of the site I have now. So at the end of 2015, I think I did the first test run.
So if we're in an era of surveillance capitalism, I'm going to ask you a two-part question. One is the Internet of Things here now, or 6G agenda implemented? And the second question is, do all human beings have a MAC number?
Yeah, we've just covered this recently. Every single person that the people we interviewed scanned had not only a MAC number, but there was another signal as well. it's a little bit complicated, and I do so many episodes. I'm not going to try to be very precise here, but it is in the episodes if you want. And what they're doing is looking for ways, and they found a way. There's been a few ways found to get rid of the MAC address, but what this tells you is that a human being is emanating a MAC address now. And so how does it get into everybody? It's probably nanotech, I would imagine. It's being sprayed in chemtrails. It is in a gallon of milk. Is it, who knows? How is it getting into everybody that's been tested? But that tells you that we are already well on the way for human beings to each be a node in the network.
It is so crazy. It's hard to believe that that's actually true, but I've heard other researchers do it, and they have that. You can get a MAC. What does MAC stand for? What's the acronym? It's
I'd have to look. I'll look it up for you.
I'll forget. Okay, but basically, it's like something. And I remember during COVID, when people passed away, they would be buried, and somebody would walk around with a MAC detector, and each one of the dead bodies would like respond with a MAC number, and the person was not a living biological organism. Like, it's unreal. Like, wow. So if that's the case, then we're like way far beyond without even our consent. You want to talk about, so I think there are parallels between MKUltra and where we are now, is this implementation without consent of the governed.
Yeah, of course it is. But you see, they have an idea that they've collected our tacit permission. 9/11 is an example of this. It is my view that 9/11, along with so many other things, was built so that they knew it would be discovered. It was a put up at some point. What happens, like it is now, so many of us know that it was a lie, that it was a false flag, yet we did nothing to do something about it. And that's where they step in, based on what James Shelby Downer taught us, to collect your tacit permission. But I have issues with that. It's the idea that universal law, if they don't want to violate universal law, they can't just put on steel toe boots and do stuff to you because you're not strong enough to stop them. So this is how we got into the situation hundreds of years ago, where the powers that be would start working on the human mind. And that led up to things like the social engineers I mentioned all the way back to the 1800s. Oh, and by the way, words have meaning, and MAC address stands for Media Access Control.
Right. And that's what they use to find a number for your land. So it hooks into the local area network. That's the importance of it. So it's not
here it is right here. A MAC address is a 12-digit hexadecimal identifier assigned to a device's network interface, or U, such as an Ethernet or Wi-Fi, to help networks recognize and communicate with a specific device. And that's where we kind of feel, everything we just said, you think, oh, I'm emanating a signal, but it just informed you that this is also used to communicate with that device. In other words, it's not just emanating a locator, it's also receiving.
Right. Good point. Right. So that's even scarier. So then you're at basically MKUltra on steroids and meth, where if you can receive somebody, they can change what they talked about neurotransmission or something in the past. Even in the 50s and 60s, it was like you could change people's moods, you could make them feel sad or make them feel irritable or whatever through hidden frequencies. They literally studied it. Helm studied it. They mentioned in these hearings today.
Well, what's crazy about everything that's happened since the end of the 90s, basically that new millennium is really a pivot point for humanity. 6 years in, we're going to get YouTube, and tell me that didn't change the world. But when we go all the way back to that, we'd already been doing the work for them. The minute that Facebook came up, which is not some clever college kid's invention, that was an asset. It wasn't always an asset. And what did we do? We went in and we recorded our entire lives before they had the ability to do what they're doing now. See, the thing about the wisdom of the crowd, as an example, is the thing that makes it really functional is massive amounts of data.
Right.
So what the early internet and all the social media, we so flagrantly wrote everything we could about ourselves and let it match us up with everyone we'd ever known, and took a picture of everything we ever eat. What it was doing was getting massive amounts of data, but it was infinite data. It didn't stop. There's more tomorrow. There's more the next day. And we did that because we trusted. And here's the example I use. You know, people will say to me, well, how the hell did we get in this situation, Crow? You call your grandparents the greatest generation. Well, yeah, they were. You have no idea what that generation was like compared to where the youngest generation I can see now is, who can't even read an analog clock or read cursive writing, which means no Bill of Rights or Constitution, by the way. And that's where we're headed with this kind of a strategy. It's the barn wall and animal farm, right? Where the animals can't quite remember what the laws on the wall were yesterday because they were changed overnight, but they can't remember that. But getting back to the greatest generation, I'll tell you what happened there. They went out, they rolled up their sleeves, and they went into World War II. And most people can't imagine what the world was like and how hard everyone was working. For the first time, women left the household to go make airplanes or whatever was needed while the men were fighting. When it was all over, they were told, you are the heroes of the world. You saved the entire world. America saved the entire world from goose stepping. You are heroes. And then the 50s happened. And the 50s was the greatest time. Dad went to work. Everyone had a home. Mom stayed home. You had a car, a home, all these new devices, dishwashers. It was just, America was fantastic. Best movies, best cars, best everything. So not only had they been told they saved the world, they were proud of this country, and it never occurred to them, even when warned by Eisenhower about the military-industrial complex as he left office, it never occurred to them that they shouldn't be trusting the people who guided them through what they were so proud of. And that didn't come around until the children of the 60s came of age. And that's why what we're talking about was put into high gear, because that massive generation was going to change the world. They were going to do big things. So they had their brains stomped out of their heads in more ways than you can imagine, drugs being just one avenue that they had to contend with.
Right, chaos and destabilization. And I mean, I tell this story all the time, but actually in the hate, like people may think of the hate now as this chaotic Manson-esque environment, but actually the Summer of Love in like 66 and 67, they didn't have hard drugs. And there were people, like it wasn't all this decadent type of things that people think about now, because it was imposed upon them, in my opinion.
It was.
Somebody grew up in San Francisco, much like the Dead, who has really dark. You talk about Tavistock. I think the guy who wrote the lyrics for the Dead, his dad worked for Tavistock. Have you ever heard that?
Of course. Well, the Dead has been shown they were on the FBI payroll. Many suspect connected to the CIA somehow. There's that old clip of George Harrison, oh, I went to the hate and I had this LSD in my pocket, and by chance someone had a microscope. So I looked at it and it looked like dirty knotted ropes. So that was it. I was done. Hey, kids, don't do drugs. Well, sorry, George. You just spent the last decade or more making psychedelia and drug use a thing. You put whole albums out to brand it, and those albums changed the world. And every young person everywhere in the world was holding their breath to get the next album, because that music and that genre called rock and roll was the be all and end all. It was the movies, it was the news, it was the book, it was the leisure time, it was everything. That music in that time. When Bob Dylan put out his poetic lyrics, they were gone over with a fine-tooth comb. What is he trying to tell us? And when the puppet show masters realized that, what do you think they did with those lyrics? Of course, we know what they did with those lyrics.
They got rid of them or edited them. Or what did
They
do?
added in their
stuff.
their triggers, their switches, their normalizations, their all the things that were within their ability to impose to control a generation, which was the biggest to date of young people who had it up to their eyeballs with the way the world was running and the wars.
That's what makes sense, is that Manson thought the White Album was about him is because somebody behind the scenes might have been writing those lyrics about people like Manson in that generation. Like, it's hard to believe. Yeah.
I have a very dim view. It is my point of view that that was all done in concert. It is my view that Manson was an asset. It is my view that the creation of the Beatles music was part of the plan.
Yeah,
it is
me
my
too.
view that most people who are young now don't remember what happened when the supposed Manson murders went on, which was another Hollywood special, and actually in Hollywood or very close to it. The day, see, we did the Summer of Love, and then actually even Woodstock didn't happen the way you think it is. But the point was, peace and love was real. There wasn't a lot of violence going on. So they had to end those hippies, and they did very effectively. They did another Woodstock most people don't remember at a speedway on the West Coast where the Rolling Stones supposedly put the Hells Angels in charge and people got killed. 69.
Altamont, yeah.
Altamont. So the hippies are getting killed by the planners. Then
And
Manson.
the CIA agent was literally airdropped by helicopter into Altamont, Timothy Leary.
There you go.
Write it. You can't write
There you go. And then Manson, all the Manson murders thing, and they connect that to the music that everybody loves. And let me ask you a question. If that music really did somehow spur the butchery and actually the removal of an infant from a pregnant lady is part of that story. She's an actor, by the way, and her husband's a producer, by the way, just hint, hint, hint. But after that happened, for the first time in my life, I saw bars go up on windows. And all of a sudden, hippies were not about peace and love anymore. They were those dirty, drugged out hippies, which Tarantino shows in his movie, the kind of loathy view. But let me ask you a question, Mr. Tarantino. If that really happened and that level of violence occurred, you think it's okay to go make an entertaining movie and rewrite what happened that night as in service to entertainment? Well, I know who you are, Tarantino. I know who everyone in Hollywood is. I know what it's used for. And I never forget how to break down the word entertainment. Enter, to go in. Tain, to hold. Meant is always mind. To go in and hold your mind. And that's what it's been used for quite a long while now.
When you see what's going on behind the scenes, it makes present history look just totally fake. I mean, what we're told is really random history is created. It's like creation of culture.
Right.
And you're absolutely right. But I'm so old. I remember people used to leave their keys in their car. Like they would leave their keys underneath the visor or just on the thing because they didn't have to worry about somebody stealing them. It's all changed.
No, you didn't lock your door. What about hitchhiking? What about hitchhiking?
Yeah.
The young people now can't imagine that you just wandered out to any road that was near you and put out your thumb and someone you knew nothing about pulled over and gave you a lift. That was real. When I was in high school in 9th grade, I hitchhiked to school almost every day. And this is a different world we're talking about that has not yet been through the Cuisinart of social engineering. The level of etiquette of one human being to another was very, very different than it is now. And I can't even describe how different it is.
This generation could not understand what it was really like in the 60s or 70s.
No.
And how peaceful and mild. And like the culture and what I watched on TV, Mutual of Omaha, animal shows,
Leave It to
no
Beaver,
trannies,
Brady
no
Bunch.
gays. Yeah. Just totally like wholesome family entertainment. It's just incredible how much it's changed in my life. It's gotten so much worse. And you have to see these things as this culture of even COVID, which wasn't that long ago and conveniently kind of forgot. Like you want to talk about MKULTRA where they're creating states, but also inducing like fake memories. They literally talked about it in Congress today about like the replacement of memories and consciousness. And you can see this happen in time where like incredible events happen and then people just give them up, like almost like they're Eloy from Time Machine or something. Like it's just like, whoa, like you're just not even addressing these incredibly serious issues at a conscious level. I mean,
well, think about some of the big changes in culture. Let's take a look at YouTube as an example. So around '06, we get this supposedly some ingenious guys invented it. Oh, by the way, people connected to other big IPOs. But anyhow, it's not just a chance that we got things like this. In the same way, royalty a few hundred years ago knew the power of the theater. In the same way, the powers that be knew when radio came along that mass communication was powerful. In the same way that when television came along, that was radio on steroids. They knew what they were about to wield. They knew it. So as we come up to the new era where things like YouTube are going to pull everything into their control center, or online is a better way to say it, but their control box, what they basically did, well, look at it this way. So all of my life, I got interested in a topic. What did I do? Well, I had to go to the library and look up the topic I wanted and find a book, or I had to research in some way to get what I wanted. When YouTube comes along, it starts turning human beings into more animalistic beings. You see, when a deer, who is an animal and doesn't plan life like a human being plans life, it reacts all day long. Oh, there's a noise. I got to run. Oh, something happened. I'm afraid. An animal reacts. That's a reactionary lifestyle. And here comes YouTube with its feed. So now the feed throws in front of you and you react to the feed. But you see, the feed was curated. One of the laws of networking is birds of a feather flock together. So a consequence of our early internet use was we mapped ourselves to what groups we belong to. Because online, you will notice a Democrat does not hang out in a Republican chat. A hard rocker does not hang out in a rap chat. We actually mapped known humanity. The third law was right. Birds of a feather flock together. So we grouped ourselves very conveniently. Then when we get to the era of feeds where things are becoming interactive, they're curating the feeds. But what's more is with all the data collection, the AI coming along, that curated feed is now targeted because it's been put through AI. So, you know, the idea of being a human being continually getting fuzzier and fuzzier, the unique abilities of a human being granted the divine spark of life and free will, that's a target in this new surveillance capitalism system.
It really is true. It's really, we're at the point where we need to question our humanity, because even me using AI kind of casually, like, it remembers the questions I asked before.
Yep.
And it was learning it, like, oh, so you asked me about that 3 days ago. I forgot, but it didn't forget. It was like, I can tell you this because, oh, you're interested in parapolitics. Let me give you this. And some of its answers aren't that great, honestly. Like, I know more than AI, but still, the sentience.
That's because
It's
we're not
surreal.
getting the real AI. We're getting the kindergarten version that will entertain us while everything that we say is collected and thrown on the blockchain.
Right.
That data is king. Data has, look, in 99, I think it was, Google had some kind of a maxim for the company, for the corporation, that was don't be evil. You know how long that lasted? That same year, venture capitalists came in and said, you turn a profit this year or you're done. Went away. No more don't be evil. The CEO, or maybe it was the COO of Sun Microsystems, right at the millennial point near 2000, said to the world, and nobody believed him, there's no privacy anymore. And everyone's all, what are you talking about? Come on. He's all, but you got all these cool free tools like email, and, you know, he started listing them up, but he told the truth. It's
Right.
just
Bill
that
Joy. His name is Bill Joy.
Yeah, no one believed him.
He was right. He's just ahead. Wait, the dude had like a crazy IQ, like 180 IQ or something super smart.
That was a quarter of a century ago that he said that.
Yeah, and he was right. He was 100% right. We don't have any privacy. Like, I literally have gone to the extreme to like get a Faraday bag and stuff like that just to get my phone in there.
Good for you. I don't use cell phones.
Oh, that's good.
Well, I have a cell phone. I do text and I do take calls. My use is about 20, 30 minutes a day, depending on the handful of people I talk to. I have never used AI, nor will I. I could push a button and make my episode image in 3 seconds, but instead I spend 4 hours or 5 every week, because in that episode image, I put puzzles, information that a human being can deduce that AI cannot, or that's my goal. Right now, I'm pretty sure it can't
Nice.
deduce. Like AI, one of the reasons handwriting went away is because AI has real trouble with handwriting.
Interesting. So it can't do cursive very well. That's it.
No, well,
It can't do hands. It can't do cursive.
you remember what I remember. Remember when we were a kid and we got the card from our grandmother on our birthday and you had to decipher it? And at
Yes.
the end of the day, you couldn't decipher some, but what you did is you knew the number of letters and the shape of the word and you got there and the context. Well, then you got one from grandpa and it was a whole different world, you know?
Right.
And so what I started to do in my episode image was use cursive fonts to experiment with that idea. But I do very simple things, like I'll make a puzzle where arrows tell the human mind where to go next, and then I'll imply things or I'll reference cultural moments that people are aware of. So there's something there with the intent of a human being in it, and that a human being can decipher if they choose to do so.
Right. Because the AI can't. It's still a robotic kind of thought processy. It still has robotic
Not
processes.
alive, nor will it ever be.
Crow, we are at the 50-minute mark. Do you have time for a few questions?
Certainly.
If anybody has any questions, put them in the chat. So there's already 4 here. Bart asks, was Gottlieb or Helms aware of the test subjects like Ted Kaczynski? I don't know offhand. Do you know?
I would imagine anyone at a level, and they're going to compartmentalize that, right? Because it's part of the protection. So it might have been need to know. But the guys at the top are not just guys who work to the top. And this was shown by McGowan. How is it that every person that showed up that just happened to be friends could sing and play instruments? And by the way, how is it that all their parents were in the military industrial complex? You're looking at bloodlines and things like that all the way to the top. And when you get the true power of AI, it is my view that there's probably a table of 13 or something somewhere who has the actual control of the real good stuff. And everyone else, it's like need to know.
The wisdom of the crowd stuff. Like, will they revolt if I make this decision? If I go to war to Iran,
Right.
How many people will I have to deal with out of this crowd? And how many will be compliant, placid little,
Let me make it worse for you. Okay, so here's the number of how many who are going to be a problem. What group do they belong to? What faith are they? What politics? What age group? How soon will they die? They know anything they want to know.
That's it. That's why. That's probably why this disclosure day was so anti-Christian, is because like Spielberg and his buddies
Let's
have
look at
the
that
goods.
for a second. How is it possible that the government's been queuing up for the exact word disclosure of so-called aliens, which you know nothing about except what Hollywood has shown you for the most part? And all of a sudden, the biggest director in the world, who has made the biggest blockbusters in the world, makes a movie at the same time. And what does he call it? Disclosure. Do you not see that there is no separation between entertainment, to go into and hold your mind, and govern to control, meant mind? It's all laid out in a plan. And when
So true.
I didn't watch the movie, nor will I, but when they roll out their little alien agenda, whoever they tell me is a good guy, I will think that they are telling me the exact opposite of what is true. That's how I will approach it.
That's amazing you said that, because that's exactly what happened. It was like the inversion of all values. So the guy leading you to disclosure is the wise old, dude who has 12 followers, like he's like a Christ figure. And then the bad guy is this mean old white guy who lost his wife and he's bitter and he's trying to hold people back from disclosure. It's really I said it was the most. It's a Luciferian initiation for sure.
Did
but
you
I think
see
it's
it?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's one of I went to the theater. I saw it myself. I think it's one of the most evil films I've ever seen in my life.
Good
up
for
there
you.
with Rosemary's Baby, and The Ninth Gate.
Good for you. I can't even let Rosemary's Baby. I just know.
It was so evil. Then at the end, the disclosure is going. It's like a world thing. So everybody in the world's watching it, and then it's going to create world peace and resolve everybody's interpersonal problems. It was incredible. Like, you're lucky to have interpersonal problems. Actually, it's kind of a paradox, or maybe it's counterintuitive, but working out those personal problems is what makes us human, guys. It goes
actually,
back to
I think I pulled you away. You were about to do questions and I tangent.
It's okay. No, this is all part of it. We're just kind of putting it all together. Here's another one. Bart asks, is there any connection between Tavistock and Lucis? I don't know. Do you know?
And what? Tavistock and what?
I think it's the Lucis Trust, the one by Alice Bailey. Have you heard of the Lucis Trust?
I'm mildly aware. I haven't.
It's like a Luciferian thing associated with UN. Sorry.
Here's what you can know. If you really want to have old but very good data, go get Daniel Estelin's book on Tavistock. I reference it all the time for this, because what he showed is that every major corporation has been sending their people out for training, and Tavistock is in that, getting them trained up for Tavistock rules. Every time a television show, the way he puts it, is written by 30-year-old geeks, then approved, then tweaked around, goes to pre-production, right before it's getting ready to go on camera, their Tavistock trained man is right there to insert the programming and what they want in it. So if that is going on for all the things that go out into the world, I think we've answered your question. That is realm reach, right? That's everywhere.
Right. World reach. If you're tapped into Hollywood, you're tapped into the world. Like some of these, I was looking at the kind of sales for these films, like Disclosure Now, and they have the world box office, and it's just incredible. It's not a localized U.S. industry. It's truly a global industry, and some of the revenues are in the billions, not hundreds of millions. Ed Girl asked, what do you think of Aquino's Mind War and Mind Store in our minds today? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I'm not sure exactly what she's referencing.
I think it's that Mind War, the PSYOP to Mind War book. Have you ever heard of that about Michael Aquino?
I'm aware of it, but I haven't read it.
Okay, here's another question. Lizzie asks, who created Tavistock? Is it still as powerful in social engineering?
Yeah, certainly. And it's got roots all the way back to the late 1800s. What they had learned in the Frankfurt Institute has a direct line up to Tavistock. And you've got to realize, too, that Tavistock is a lord's last name in some way. I've forgotten exactly the connection. But they used to have a logo, which is on the cover of Estelin's book, of a sheep with a steel band around its waist hanging from a chain.
Wow.
That was their logo. It's on the front of Estelin's book. Just read that book and you will have your jaw dropped. It even is the reason I'm so impressed with it, because he does what I do. You referred to me as a polymath. Well, maybe that's fair if you leave out the math. But the number of subjects, and one of which is television use, he breaks, and I had broken it down before I read this, basically a habitual television watcher, within about 10 seconds, if it's a habitual user, your mind's brainwaves start to go identical to what an opioid user's brainwaves look like.
Wow.
And you don't think this is used, and I mean, it's crazy. And then he goes and draws the line to all the big corporations. Remember the Macy's store that was in all the big malls? Well, that family was doing the most heinous things all the way back in the 30s. They were already looking at eugenics and other things.
Was it the same Macy conferences? Was that the same people? Wow.
Same name.
Wow, I didn't know.
And
I never made that
connection
connection.
There, right?
Every time you buy a perfume, you're paying for a dark social engineering person to study how to subvert you even greater detail.
It's never been more important to grasp your free will and employ it, and to be a unique human being. I have rules for myself. I don't join groups, will not join a group. I want my own thoughts. I don't want to be inheriting someone else's ideas. I do my own work, whether I'm right or whether I'm wrong. And being unique is a very special thing, because one of the things the system we're living in, it homogenizes very well.
That's a really good point. And that kind of goes back to like solving interpersonal problems. The reason you have those problems because you're different, and those differences are actually great. It's great that some people are maybe more bookish or more extroverted or something like that. So treasure your differences, honestly.
What's the old one you remember? I know you remember it. What's the old saying? Variety is the spice of life.
It really is. So like treasure those things, and ages and variance and authentic diversity and differences of opinion are okay. Crow, we are at the hour mark. Great conversation. Thanks for coming on. We had 275 live listeners. So thanks everybody for listening and everybody for all the great comments and questions. I have your I have your website up here, which is you spell CRROW, CRROW 777 radio.com. And that links to, I think you're at somewhere around 600, 700 podcast episodes. We're at 685. So
Yes.
there's a lot on there. L. Ron Hubbard. I saw the Internet of Us.
If there's an important topic, we've almost certainly done an in-depth 2-hour on it. And there are guests, and there are episodes where it's just me and my co-host Jason. At the top, you can see a link there, Shoot the Moon. That's a 2-hour film. When we put it on the independent film circuit, we thought nobody would go for it. It's got 10 awards now. The last two came from India, the last one from Jaipur. Also, sun images. I'm furiously trying to film the sun in high end. You could not produce solar work like this 10 years ago at this level. The sun is directly connected to the age change. Many people note the sun used to appear yellow to me. Now it's very pale. Yeah, you're right. The age is changing, and the sun is the arbiter of the energies that are lifting our consciousness right now. I saw a bulldog grab a skateboard and jump into a pool and use it like a skateboard's supposed to use. If that dog did that in the 1970s, he would have been galactically famous. Our consciousness and spiritual tendencies are rising along with every other living thing here, which is part of the reason chemtrails are trying to block our download from the sky clock. But everything is on CRROW777radio.com. First hour is free. You don't even need to log in. And everything else is pretty much free once you are a member and supporting free speech at these levels, which is a very rare thing. I go online and I watch people self-censor. They say ridiculous things like pew pew, as if AI can't deduce that that means gun. They will not say die. They will say unalive, because clearly nobody can put together that unalive means dead. On my site, you get free speech.
Great. So check it out. I'll put a link to your website. Is that the best place to contact you if people want to reach out? Are you on social media or anything?
We do have social media, but it's a billboard pointing to this.
So everything goes back to your website.
Yeah.
Again, that's CRROW, CRROW 777 radio.com. And then we spoke with CRROW777. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thanks so much, man. It was a pleasure.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Likewise. Stay there.